Welcome to Syntax. If you have a .env file sitting on your computer, this is the episode for you because we're going to talk to you about why you shouldn't be doing that. My name is Wes Boss, and with us today, we've got Theo Ephraim and Phil Miller. They work on VarLock, which is a solution, a library that will help you inject your secrets into your app and into your coding agents. But we also just want to talk about why is everyone just putting text files on their computer with all of their secrets when we have all of this logging into Notion for me is like a ritual where I have to use 1,000 things and there's beep bop boom and pin codes and everything, and then we just put the database string in a .env file. So welcome, guys. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
So let's start there. What's wrong with .env files?
Well, yeah, I mean, why don't we first just talk about you have these files sitting there. Often you're putting plain text secrets in there, and maybe you don't have any super sensitive production secrets in there, but you still probably have some, or maybe you needed to run some script that connected to production, so you put it in there once, and you forget that the file's even there. And especially now in the era of AI coding agents where they're just reading all your files, slurping it all up, sending it off to some server, the only real safe way to ensure that they're going to be not sent up to, OpenAI is to get them out of plain text altogether.
To go back a bit to answer your question, I think the reason they're sitting in plain text is because every tutorial on the internet, the first step is put the secret in plain text in a .env file, and then do the rest of the tutorial. So everyone is still telling people to do that, even though we know that it's wrong. And then we copy and paste those files on Slack, right?
I think that even the harder challenge is for the most part that most people don't even know of a different way to do it. That's just the way, right?
Yeah. Or the easier way, the right way is such a pain, right? Or has seat fees of, $20 per developer per month. So it's you're oh, I could do it that way, but it's just not worth the hassle.
And people like to say that they do, security best practices, even if they don't always do them, right? They're going to they're going to choose the path of least resistance, especially if it's a last minute thing, right?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So me and Serge were working on the Mad CSS website, and he was sort of scaffolding it out and building kind of the first run of it. I had some GitHub secrets that for the login, right? And I threw them in 1Password as an environment. And then he went through it, and he said he spent half a day just trying to get them injected with the 1Password CLI thing. And then he ended up just being screw it. I can't get it to work with these two specific things.
Copy paste it,
which I think happens probably more often, where people are just ideally, yes, I would have something, but it just doesn't work as well. It doesn't work with my setup and whatnot. Yeah. So what is the solution here? So what should we be doing?
So let's go back a second and just talk about .env.example, because regardless of how you're shoving stuff in there, the common way is okay, at least we have a .env.example. That's clearly better than having nothing, right? It's clearly, arguably better than having it, buried in a README in a custom table. But what are the problems there, right? So you open it up, it's a mix of half of the values are real values that should be used, right? Like a port number or some feature flags or things like that. And half of it is a placeholder that's put your key here, talk to Bob to provision a key, right? It's unclear which are real things to use. It's unclear which are placeholders. The utility of having an example there, depending on the item, is arguable. And then you copy paste this thing. And now you suddenly have this problem of trying to keep these two things in sync, right? You don't have a single source of truth. So half of the, there's documentation in that file. There's also documentation in your validation code, if you have it at all. You maybe have type generation, or maybe you're hand maintaining types. So all this stuff gets spread out all over the place to the point where you just say, you know what, if I can avoid using this at all, I'm going to. So you don't put things that should be environment variables or just like sort of static config in there anymore. You just put them in const, scattered all throughout your code base.
Dude,
Yes.
you're just like you're speaking exactly what I do.
Have you been looking at our code?
This has hit me. Yeah.
So the solution there, and this is kind of how VarLock came into being, is like, okay, rather than having a tool that tries to keep your, in example or your schema in sync with some other file that actually has values, what if we unify this so you have one file that contains both schema information and can set values declaratively or just have static values? And what if we make it sort of a unified toolkit to deal with sensitive things and non-sensitive things, and we understand exactly which ones are sensitive? So that's kind of what VarLock is all about. So it looks like a normal .env file, but we use JS doc style decorator comments. So you can say in a comment right above the item, @required, @sensitive, @type equals email, @type equals string, starts with whatever, ABC _, right? So there's this very rich schema that you can express through just these comments that feels still familiar because it's like a .env file. And then aside from the schema sort of stuff that you use through comments, we also have a function call syntax so that you can declaratively say, go fetch this from 1Password. Like similar to the OP inject or OP run or whatever, except for that it's totally general and you have a function. So there's a plugin for 1Password, OP, whatever. There's a plugin for AWS, for GCP, for Azure, for whatever. And it's super easy to write new plugins. So you have this sort of unified toolkit, like fetch it from here, validate it, generate types, single source of truth, documentation, everything all in one place.
The nice thing there is that you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket, right? So you can use 1Password for development or up to staging. You can use Secrets Manager in production. You can inject from Vercel in production, whatever you like. So you're not sort of like tied to one vendor for the actual persistence of those secrets.
Okay, so I'm looking at it right now. It's a .env.schema file that I assume you commit to your repo, right? Like this is something that's allowed to go into your repo, and then you declare the types, which is really nice because like half the time, like I try to get somebody else spun up on a project, you like, oh yeah, here's what I think you need in like the .env file, and then they run it and they get an error, process.env whatever, not defined, right? And your example is out of date, all that type of stuff. So this is really nice that you do that as well as the actual types, which is also nice. Like you can describe starts with sk dash, because like somebody might call it a token, somebody else might call it an ID, and you're like, which one do I need? That's really cool. So everybody who's working on your project then has the .env.schema file. Then does everybody in your team need to use the same way to expose those? Like if one of them uses 1Password, do they need to use the 1Password as well?
It's up to you, right? So you could have it so that this only has the schema and does validation, and then you're putting values in, in a .env.local file that you're still copy pasting, doing whatever you want. You could in the schema declaratively say, hey, go fetch this from 1Password and wire up sort of, each item to the right place. You can load a whole bunch of stuff from 1Password at once, like whether it's an environment or a single item that's like a .env blob. You could load from, a variety of other places, or like in production, often the first step of sort of implementing this is set this up, the validation will run, but you're still going to inject real environment variables from, the Vercel secrets UI, right, for prod. And you're still getting that extra validation. And, especially when it fails, now instead of getting this weird runtime explosion, it's like this thing blew up. When it goes to try to build or boot or whatever, it's going to say, hey, this environment variable is missing and it's marked as required, or this thing doesn't, it's typed in wrong.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw this, I was worried about like production, but you're not modifying the env file. You're still copying and pasting the env vars into Vercel or whoever's dashboard the same way, but you are still getting all the features. So that's really
you could do either. You could do it. You could the first step would be here's a schema, run validation, leave that stuff being injected how it was before. The second step is, I want to actually centralize all of this. So I'm going to move everything to 1Password. And then on production, you would just set one single key, which would be like a service account token, which enables it to talk to 1Password. And especially if you're in sort of a like multi-cloud, microservice situation and you got a million things going on, like centralizing everything into a sane way of dealing with it is going to be, much, much easier.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's funny because like when you first hear about like, okay, we're adding a schema to your env files and type safe comments and all this stuff. It all feels like maybe that's too much for env vars, and then you realize I've hit every single one of these use cases in which this would have made my life better. Every single one of them, and like the buy-in is like so insignificant that like why isn't everybody using this? This is like, it feels like this is like kind of a missing piece of technology, right?
One of the best feelings is when you implement this and then you go and delete all of that code that's just checking node env.
Oh, yeah.
So you set up value in production or value in staging, all of that goes away, right? What Theo didn't mention before is like you can have a hierarchical set of files based on the current environment too. So you could have a dev schema, a staging schema, a production schema. They could either be expressed in separate files or using some of our sort of primitives in one file.
Yeah. And so, you can, there's also like, there's an import syntax, right? So you can import from other places in a mono repo. That means, you can have shared stuff at the root and each service can then import just the things they need from, it's very, very flexible.
Yeah. So what does that buy-in look like for the import? Is it really just swapping out your process.env imports or whatever with VarLock imports?
So what I'm talking about is importing within a .env file, importing another .env file, right? So there's a new root decorator at import, .. / .. / and that will import the root .env, right? Or you could import specific keys from it. In terms of implementing it in your code, we have sort of drop-in integrations for a bunch of different frameworks, Vite, Next, Astro, all that. And you could continue to use process.env because they are just injected as environment variables. But we also have sort of a nicer helper that gives you coerced values and better type completion. So like if you mark something as a Boolean, then when you actually go, env dot whatever Boolean thing, it's going to be true or false. It's not going to be 1 or 0 or true and hey, check if this thing is a string or all that extra coercion logic you end up shoving in 5 different places. All that just goes away.
Is there ever a standard? Like, is anyone working on a standard for this type of thing? Because with Cloudflare, you import env from Cloudflare workers, which I like better than just process.env, but I don't like that because then it makes my code like kind of pigeonholed into. Wait, doesn't Node do that as well? You tell us. You're the experts.
So, I mean, you can use process.env. There's also import.env or import.meta.env, right? And I think why all of this really gets confusing for people is because in a front-end context, there are no environment variables, yet we use environment variables to inject things like statically in at build time. So like what even is an environment variable and how are they used really varies depending on what kind of framework you're working with, what kind of project you're working with. We really do try to simplify a lot of that. So we have this import env from varlock /env helper, and that does try to just make it work in all cases. So that works in the front end and the back end, and it does the replacements with Vite and all of that stuff. One other cool thing, like it does those replacements based on your schema. So you say, hey, this is sensitive or it's not. It's not based on some weird prefix, right? And it's a lot more explicit in terms of what you want it to be doing.
Yeah, it's not just this random thing that's available in the air. Like where does process come from, Yeah.
And if you want to see all of the errors in your application, you'll want to check out Sentry at sentry.io/syntax. You don't want a production application out there that, well, you have no visibility into in case something is blowing up and you might not even know it. So head on over to sentry.io/syntax. Again, we've been using this tool for a long time and it totally rules. All right.
what about other languages as well? Like this is not just a JavaScript thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, why, one could argue, why are you even using a .env file with these weird decorators to do this stuff, right? Like, but we started there because it's what people are used to. So we're trying to meet people where they are, and it feels very familiar, and it feels applicable in any kind of language, right? Like we did have a first kind of version of this called Domino, where the schema was written in TypeScript, and it worked really well, and a lot of things were cool about that. But it, trying to convince some Rust developer to like use this TypeScript schema in their code, like it's just not going to happen, right? Whereas if you say, hey, look, it's a .env file with some extra little markup on it, I was like, oh, that actually makes sense. So for VarLock, we have a standalone binary build that you can use with any language. So you could still do VarLock run, it will load, validate, do all of that, and then inject it into your code, which could be any language. We do also, though, like part of what we do is generate types. So there's a root decorator at generate types, and you can say language equals TypeScript, and it will generate TypeScript types. So we don't generate types for other languages yet, but that should also be possible. So you can imagine like, hey, just generate my Go types for my config, or generate, Rust, like whatever, right? It's by separating it, it becomes a lot more applicable for anything.
Yeah. The benefit of the JavaScript ecosystem today is the sort of deep integration. So we do, console log redaction of those sensitive values. We prevent you from leaking them in HTTP responses, that kind of thing. So, we would need to do integrations in other languages to give you that level of integration, but that's coming too.
One of the reasons why I think people like the 1Password directly hasn't caught on is that you have to change your run commands to like run something first, and then injects it into the environment, and then it runs. Like it would like inject it and then run npm run dev, and then you'll have that. But then there's these weird issues where if it has like a sub process, the variables don't get pushed to it sometimes. Is yours like that as well? Like, do I have to run VarLock something and npm run dev?
Only if you're trying to if you're injecting it into, say, a non-JavaScript language. For the JavaScript languages, or like for different frameworks, like we have a Vite integration, we have a Next integration. So those kind of happen at the Vite config level, and it just works. And same with Node, or Bun or whatever. Like we have an auto import command that reaches out to the CLI and loads and injects it. So in all those cases, you're not prefixing everything with VarLock run. It would just be and this is a real other problem. Like say you wanted to run some database migration, right? And you need to feed in that database URL into the migration, or into the migrate command, right? You could do VarLock run, whatever, Prisma migrate, and it would inject that in correctly without having to do any, weird stuff, having an extra JSON file or whatever, right?
Yeah, cool. I'm curious your opinions here on when something should be a constant versus go in an environmental variable. Because sometimes I go nuts and just put every single URL ever into it. I'm like, well, that might change. But then when I'm searching through my code, it's kind of tricky. At what point is something a constant, and what time does something become an environmental variable?
I mean, I would say the purists would say when it's dependent on the environment. So if that URL is going to change, it should be an environment variable. I don't know. What do you think there, Theo?
I will say this. Because .env is such a pain, I think everyone avoids it, right? You avoid putting stuff in envars because your .env.example gets so long, and you copy paste it and it's illegible, right? Whereas now when you have this schema, the more work you put into it, the more comments you put in there, and the more validation you put in there, the more valuable it gets. And you're not trying to keep anything in sync anymore. So I've personally found, as we start using it, I'm putting more and more stuff in there because I have this really nice tooling, really nice type completion, really nice validation. It's if I think this thing might change or just kind of even feels configgy, why not throw it in there?
Throw it in there. I agree. The not having it typed is a major reason why I often would be maybe throw this in a constants.ts file. And like recently, I don't know, in the last couple of years, all of my Cloudflare Workers stuff, they do a really good job at typing your environmental variables. And they have this new thing where it will just auto generate for you, and it's all beautifully typed. And you just import env, and like I'm like, oh, this is like a nice experience for environmental variables. And it sounds like this is a lot, like maybe even better, right? You can have everything fully typed.
Yeah, and it's self-documenting too. So we have a docs decorator where you can give it a URL, so you can literally like link out to documentation. So when you hover over that variable, you get the nice IntelliSense with a description and a link to the docs. So it's a nice sort of onboarding tool for new developers, or a debugging tool as well.
Yeah, like the IntelliSense is pretty awesome. Like, and it's just not possible to get this from something like Zod, right? Zod is doing all this crazy magic TypeScript voodoo to extract like the types from this big crazy schema. We just generate a normal TypeScript like file, and each one of those, when you look at it, like the comments are really long because we actually also have like a little SVG in there. So we use like a Iconify. You can attach an icon to every one too. So it's like you hover over the like whatever Google API key, and there's like the little Google logo. Like it looks really slick. And it's to a level where you would never do it yourself, but it's just when you're actually using it, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and you can picture a world where some of these are vendor provided, and you don't even have to write them by hand. Like we'd like to eventually get there, like have a big schema registry for off the shelf stuff.
Yeah, right. That'd be cool. Yeah, I was wondering about that. I love the decorator syntax, honestly, because it's really readable. I was just seeing the one that was prevent leaks. What is that doing? That's like it's seeing if your var is used in an HTTP request and then throwing an error. That's sick.
we do two things with sensitive. We know exactly which values are sensitive, and we know the real value. So we're not trying to do any like, oh, this thing looks like an API key, so we better be careful with it. Like, it's like, no, this is the API key. And there's two things we do, currently only in JavaScript, but we patch global console methods to automatically redact that value if it's written out in console log or console error.
Yeah.
And then we also do that if you do VarLock run, like it's redacted in standard out and like sort of on the way. The other thing that we do is we patch global, server response and response objects, so that if, like, say you have an Express server or whatever, anything basically, if you return one of those sensitive values in the outgoing HTTP response, it will block you. So, like, especially if, say you're writing an MCP server, right, that needs access to a bunch of sensitive keys, it's probably not going to leak anything, but this is just an extra layer of protection where it is physically impossible for it to leak it.
Or in this sort of RSC world where it might be hard to reason about where a component is rendered in that tree on the client or the server. And then, you change one dependent in that tree and all of a sudden it's now rendered on the client. It'll prevent that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so easy to do the wrong thing, and it's like, why do I have to know all the rules and which things I should put a prefix on? And it's like, let's just make it so you can't shoot yourself in the foot. Make the easy way just secure.
Easy to do the wrong thing, which is what I like. What I like about this whole setup anyway.
You know what you guys should do, and I know that we shouldn't be putting them in .env files. One thing that I tweeted about many years ago is like when I'm recording courses, you got to make sure you don't actually tab to the wrong .env file. I saw a couple of weeks ago somebody was streaming and they tabbed to the wrong tab, and then their key was on there, and somebody racked up a $3,000 AI bill just in like an hour or two, right? Like it's so quick to do those things. And John Papa made a VS Code extension that is called Cloak, which it basically just like blocks them out. So you can show your .env file, but you can't actually look at them. But it stopped working, hasn't been updated in 4 or 5 years. You guys should like fix that Chrome extension and then just put a huge banner for VarLock on and be like, you shouldn't be doing this.
Stop doing this.
Stop doing this. Use VarLock.
Yeah. The official 1Password VS Code extension, I believe, does that with a little bit of setup.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a few more extensions I've seen pop up now lately. Yeah, I mean the something I wanted to talk about was like, because AI coding is so much easier now, the rate of like, hey, I built a tool that injects environment variables or validates environment variables or, encrypts them and you can send them to your teammates. Like, they're popping up literally every day. There's a new one. It's insane. And which clearly shows that people are not satisfied with the tooling as it is today. I think a lot of them get it wrong, where they're like, hey, I built a tool, it checks to make sure that your example file and your real environment is like still in sync. It's like, no, you still have the same problem. Actually use a schema, actually load it so it can never be out of sync. Like, just remove the problem.
Let's talk about just AI agents in general, right? Like, you're using Claude Code or Open Code or Gemini, CLI, any of these things. In some cases, it's nice for them to have environmental variables, right? And I haven't seen a really good way of how to necessarily inject those things. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a pretty great solution for that. So you can do it with VarLock run and just load the ones you need and pass those in. I think Theo has a quick demo if you want to see it, but we don't have to do that now.
I would like to see what that process is like.
And I can talk a bit about that while he's setting that up. I think the difference there, especially with Claude, is those secrets might not necessarily live in a repo, right? Those might be sort of outside the repo because you want to, for example, the way we use it, we need to pass in the sort of Amazon Bedrock config so we can use that for our Claude instead of the default thing. So that doesn't necessarily live in the repo. It lives in the invocation of Claude, right? So you can stick that in your home folder and just pass that in when you load Claude.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a bunch of different parts of this problem, right? But this is one specific part, which is I actually just need some keys to run the AI agent itself, not that the AI agent will need. But I've got this .env.claude file that lives in my home folder, right? And it's using a plugin to say, hey, I want to be able to talk to 1Password. I initialize it with some settings. I have my function that's going to fetch that from 1Password. I mark it as sensitive, some other configuration, right? And then in my sort of, setup, I have an alias for vclaud, which calls varlock run, points at the .env.claude file that's in my home folder, and then runs Claude. So that is, obviously it's only part of the problem, but this lets me have, a centralized place outside of the context of one repo to fetch these environment variables, feed them to Claude itself, which I think is just super handy, right? As soon as I had it set up, I've been using it all the time, and it's awesome.
And those variables could be, auth keys for MCP servers or anything, downstream of Claude itself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, then there's the next part of the problem, which is how do you limit sort of the agent from having access to things? And there's some different things there. You could use a proxy. At the very least, you can limit what environment variables are passed to it in the first place. That's something that you can do with us. Ben at Modem is just using it for BodBot, which is sort of his OpenClaw, teammate kind of thing. Very cool.
Are we talking about Ben Vinegar?
Yeah,
we are.
Former Syntax team manager, Ben Vinegar.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ben.
So he just started using this to run BodBot, right? And he's got all these different keys that the bot needs, right? So at least having that schema there, it's very clear what's there, what are the types, explode if they're not correct.
Yeah, so I think there's two sides to this, right? There's the security guardrails we already talked about to prevent the secrets from being leaked to the agents. So, getting them out of plain text and then preventing leaks in those HTTP responses in your console log statements, etc. And then I think one of the big benefits is this schema-driven approach. So the agents themselves are pretty adept at writing it because it's, a known DSL that they can reason about. And they have the CLI method they can call to validate the output. So, schema in, validation out, you can write a pretty short Claude skill and it usually does a good job.
That's great.
Yeah, and speaking of AI stuff, I noticed you all have both an MCP and a llms.txt, which is just like, the docs in a text format. But what's the MCP doing for you all?
It's just doc search. So
cool.
It's just, I believe it's using the Cloudflare AI gateway and then autorag pointed at the doc site itself. Cool. So just an easier way, I think if you just like point it at that server and tell it to install VarLock and do the onboarding, it'll do a pretty good job, but I probably need to retest that because it's been a few weeks.
Sure. Yeah.
A few weeks is a lifetime here.
I know. Yeah. I appreciate you all having open code config in your copy and paste config for the MCP. So many people don't put that in there. I don't know why. I think open code's getting a little bit more ubiquitous, but still, good job
great
for that.
Great Toronto startup. We both spoke at one of Ben Vinegar's events a few months ago.
Ben is the man, for sure. I actually have a quick question here. You have like GitHub Actions integration. I hate working with env vars in GitHub Actions. What does this do for me there? Yeah,
so it's a pretty thin wrapper on the CLI, but it allows you to do, just a quick validation in CI. So, that would be the equivalent of running, I think it actually is just running VarLock load. So that way you can validate your env as a first step before you do the rest of your workflow.
Oh, I hate when my action fails because the env var is wrong or missing or something, and I don't find out till like the third step, and I have to sit and wait. And like for me, that like feedback loop of like it takes so long that I just like lose my mind with that stuff.
Yeah, and then you get a nice, pretty printed redacted output, right? So you can see what key was missing or which one failed validation. And if in the case where you're using, GitHub secrets, you can just go in and paste in the key you forgot or whatever.
Sick.
That sort of output in CI to show you what is the current state of all your environment, I have found extremely useful. It's such a nice debugging tool to be able to go and see what was actually going on here. Because, in the past, just the amount of back and forth you'd have to do to start, logging things and like then take it out of the code is just such a pain. And just, I did want to clarify one thing about the GitHub action, is that like, if you're using a sort of, say you have like a whatever Svelte app or Next app or some JavaScripty thing, like you probably don't actually need to use that action. It's already built into your code and how it's loading and everything. So like that action would be just for if you weren't really using VarLock like deeply tied into your code else, like otherwise.
Oh, I see. So if you're using VarLock in your code, you're saying if you were using like the Vite VarLock plugin, not just if you were using a Svelte Kit app off the shelf,
like,
right?
Or like if you have VarLock built into your code base already,
okay. Cool. You don't
then you wouldn't need the action. Like you'd already have it installed. You could just, you could invoke it yourself. It's already gonna fail if your build fails at the beginning. So it's
hell yeah.
But it's nice if you have like a multi-step workflow and you need to, thread an environment variable through later steps. It gives you an easy way to reuse them, output them.
I'm curious what your opinions on like secrets managers are, and like should we be using them? I know some people have like services that they use, and like you've got 1,000 developers and you can manage access to them. Probably for smaller folks, just throwing them in 1Password is probably good. But like, what do you think about like signing up for something and having a place where you can put all of your secrets?
We're big fans of 1Password. I think that even for a lot of people that are using something else on top of it, the secret still probably lives in 1Password as the source of truth. So it's like, why not just use it as the source of truth instead of copy pasting it? Vault is a nightmare. In physical is a bit better. All the cloud providers have their own things. Doppler seems like they're all fine, but they're all enterprise tools that would only make sense if you are like an enterprise and willing to pay all this money. And so like we wanted to build a tool that would make sense to use even when you're a solo dev and you're doing everything yourself, and then scales up to a giant team and having a lot of complex stuff going on.
Yeah, man. And this is not anything to do with VarLock, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on it. Every time I spin up a demo, I need to go grab an API key from somewhere, and you log into, I got to remember what the OpenAI playground URL is, or like you have to do like slay the dragons. That is the Google developer console.
Oh my God.
Finding it, they're just all so awful. And I'm reminded of like some of these tools for AWS. To set them up, you have to like set up an IAM rule that allows
horrible.
you to do anything.
Yep.
And then the tool itself will act on your behalf. I'm curious if you've ever thought about something that will allow you to generate API keys from multiple services as you need it. Because I always want like an API key from whatever and put like a $10 limit on it, and just fussing around. I'm not reusing API keys across projects, because if that gets out, then I'll have no idea how that leaked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the holy grail of all this is like automated secret rotation and dynamic keys, right? So you have a master key, right, that only lives in, say that lives in, like, we'll talk through the CI case, right? So let's say you have a master key that lives in GitHub, but as part of the like deployment CI run, it's going to issue a new key that has, less privileges and is only going to be around for a little while. And it is something that we're working on. Like, it's just it's tricky. It's really tricky.
And like, I'm sure a lot of like these companies don't want you giving out API keys as well. Like, is there an API for API keys to every business?
No, OpenAI actually has one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's slightly terrifying, because if you have a master key, I believe you can just mint new master keys.
Just a whole bunch.
So don't leak those master keys, folks.
Yeah.
Oh
man.
Oh man. So this is this project is just like, it's free to install and use, right? Like what's the like?
How do you guys make money?
Yeah. How's this thing gonna stay afloat? Is this sponsored, or what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, we've got investors. We've got runway. I do think anything like this that you're trusting to put in your repo, you're trusting with your secrets, it has to be open source. It has to be, most of it has to be free. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd be putting like a black box binary on my computer and trusting it with my secrets, although maybe that's not the case anymore.
We NPM install those every single day. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then it installs 5 more and then takes your crypto wallets. Yeah. Yeah, long term, obviously, like, there's a secret management play here. Today we're kind of, that platform agnostic control plane that sits in front of all of them. But, there's obviously a future where we have our own offering there as well. We're exploring some sort of more enterprisey workflows right now around dynamic secrets, secret rotation, that kind of thing, which, there's a pretty hefty cost to running the compute. So it certainly will not be free.
Yeah. So there's no rug pull coming with the library, right? You just install the library.
Absolutely. Day one, we both agreed there will never be a rug pull, especially seeing, a company like HashiCorp lose so much good favor with the community after doing that, or, Mongo, Redis, etc. All of these licensing changes that never really make anyone happy except the people who make money from it.
Yeah, but you can easily imagine our own hosted secret, sort of backend, right? You can imagine some additional features around like logs and policy, right? Like, so ensure that none of my developers have any plain text secrets on their machine, right? Like, you can imagine sort of some of those enterprisey features, the automated rotation, dynamic secrets. But we always were like, let's start with just making the tool useful for everyone.
Yeah.
Rather than like, here's a secure place to put your secrets. Now have fun wiring it into your code. Like, we start on the other end.
That's awesome.
Well, I definitely want to give a shout out. We recently participated in the GitHub Secure Open Source Fund with a bunch of the like most popular open source projects in the world. It was really great to be, one of the smaller participants. So shout out to them. We just announced that last week.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that rolls.
I think for a lot of people, like, if you're using 1Password already, like, so many people we talk to are using 1Password, but they don't really think about using it for their developer secrets, right?
That's me.
I would say they do have some offerings in the sort of developer workflow stuff. Our tool obviously makes it easier and adds a whole lot more on top. So if you do use 1Password, give it a shot, try it out. I love, scanning my finger to unlock the secrets. It just feels good. I don't know how safe it really is, but it feels much safer. And the fact that it all is a single source of truth, that like I can update it in one place, I can think about it, it's all, together, is just super nice. And that is one of the benefits that 1Password has, like versus something like AWS or these other tools. Like you always need a secret zero, right? Which is like what lets me connect to this backend. With 1Password, because you're also using it for other stuff, you already have the secret zero. It's already set up. It's on your machine. Whereas for anything else, you're going to need, an API key, a machine token, whatever, which you then need to store somewhere on your machine, and you run back into the same problems of like, where do I put this? How do I keep it secure?
Totally. All right. Last section we have here is sick picks and shameless plugs. Did you guys come prepared with either of those?
Yeah, I can start if you want. My sick pick is Bella.io, Bela. They make these awesome little, audio modules. So this is a Bella Gem Multi. It's a 10 in, 10 out audio interface. And it has like a web IDE. You just plug it into your computer with a USB-C cable, and you've got an IDE for it. I can see Scott's eyes lighting up. I can see the.
And Scott's already bought one for sure.
So you can make custom instruments with it. It's super cool. You can run pure data patches. Yeah.
Programmable Eurorack module, dude.
Yeah, they have open source Eurorack modules too. Yeah, I mean,
what? I don't even know what this is.
It's so picture it. It's like it's a sound card with a computer bolted to it, and an open platform that lets you write code. So, you could make a synthesizer with it. You could, like, big artists use it for installations because you can process, sensors and stuff through it. That's why I got it.
Cool.
Oh, so inputs to this are what?
There's like 10 audio inputs and guitar. 10 audio outputs. And then there's analog inputs, so like voltage, and then digital voltage, like you would have on the GPIO pins of a Raspberry Pi or something.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
This seems very hackable and very cool.
They got a lot of cool stuff on here. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, their Eurorack modules are super fun too. That Bella Gliss.
Oh.
It's just a little touch strip.
Yeah.
I've got the best idea for your business, for VarLock. Instead of touching your finger, you have to play Stairway to Heaven to unlock your environmental variables.
Dude. Yeah, well, there's no stairway allowed here. Sorry.
There's no stairway. Yeah. Oh my God. We did that for our capture challenge. I made Wes sing certain pitches. It would say like sing a D flat or something, a D sharp.
And like the hilarious part is I didn't know what a D or a E was. Like I don't know. I'm an enjoyer of music, but I don't know anything about making music. So Scott had to coach me through how to sing an E.
Awesome. And yeah, shameless plug. I make music too. So if you go to nauticalartifacts.bandcamp.com, all my stuff's up there. There's a new remix album probably coming the next month or two.
Cool. Love the art.
Sick. Canadian as well. He's
Hamilton.
I didn't say this as well, but yeah, Phil's from Hamilton, which is awesome. I'm from Hamilton, best city in the world. So
I'm almost from Hamilton. Theo, what do you got?
Yeah, sick picks. Let's see. I've really been enjoying a new show lately that I had not heard about at all. It's called Wonder Man on Disney, and it is a Marvel universe show with very little superhero-y stuff in it, and it's really, really excellent. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. And shameless plug, I've been building a little side project with my new AI superpowers, as we all probably are. The website is howtostore.food, and it is a sort of comprehensive guide for, kiwis. Do they go in the fridge or not? Can you freeze them? Can you dehydrate them? Just everything you could possibly think of. And I've used like a ton of really, really cool like CSS page transitions.
Oh, yeah,
it's
they
really
look beautiful.
Nice.
Cool.
It's not quite done yet, so I'm hoping it'll be ready by the time this goes out. But
It looks sick.
Please check it out.
Yeah.
All right, can you settle a bet for us since you're a food storage expert?
I could try.
Soy sauce. Is that fridge or cupboard?
You know, I
Like
keep mine.
not what it says on the bottle, but
No,
you
let's hear what he
personally.
has to say.
Yeah.
I keep mine in the fridge, but I tend to look at the bottle and see what it says and
That's
try
me.
to follow
Man,
it.
yes, the man has gotten to you. Okay.
No, that's fine. It's perfectly the fine way to live your life is to look at the bottle and put in the fridge if it says to. That's perfectly fine.
But
I have a
that would
question in
definitely
that
be
vein.
one. That would be one where if somebody had it not in the fridge, I wouldn't be like, "Oh God, it's gone off." Like I'd be like, "No, it's fine, whatever."
I've
Probably
heard
just
of
lasts
people who
longer.
don't keep ketchup in the fridge.
Not me.
Oh, that was me. We grew up as a child. We grew up with the ketchup, and then you'd get the ketchup sauce on the top because it would separate, and you have to shake it. But I was fine. But we were a ketchup in the fridge now, so it's actually interesting that I changed that. But certainly not soy sauce. There's people
Maybe
that don't
I'll
put
learn.
mayonnaise in the fridge.
But-
which
Oh,
is-
mayo goes in the fridge for sure.
Mayo
Yeah.
goes in the fridge. What?
How do y'all feel about butter?
butter
Oh.
out of the fridge for sure. We put it on top of the in the cupboard on top of the light, so it's always a little bit melty.
Yeah.
I prefer it
think
out of the fridge, but we keep it in the fridge.
A lot of people keep it in the fridge, but I'm telling you, if you're one of those people, try it out of the fridge, and then when you go to spread it on something, you'll be like, what have I been doing with my life?
Yeah.
I don't know
I
how
need to
people
get with
could do
that.
it. Like half the year, our butter
Yeah.
is too hard when it's out of the fridge.
It's not an easy spread, I'll tell you. Hard work.
Oh man, awesome! Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Check it out, varlock.dev, and I'm gonna get my house in order and a
I'm getting my
please,
house
uh,
in order right now.
Yeah.
I'm
Please-
putting
gonna
some-
Please
no
give us a
more
star.
environment.
As an open source developer, we need those stars. So if you do check it out, please give us a star on GitHub.
I just started 9:14. If you're listening to this right now, if you are number 1,000, you will win a free environmental variable.
I'll give you a sweet T-shirt if you're number.
Yeah, we'll give you a
1,000.
sweet shirt and some
Oh, sick.
stickers. Yeah, we still have to make them, but now I have to make them.
And you guys got great branding, so the shirt is going to be sick. So
All right, peace.
Thanks so much.